Pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Why Is That? Once again, I should reiterate that I'm already at the point where there's less than 10 questions to be answered here, but here, number 57 kind of dives into my past. Pretty far back, as a matter of fact. The question down here asks me, why is that you consider yourself a 90s kid? Now, the truth is, I was born in the 90s, and I did live through the remainder of the 90s. I've vaguely considered myself a 90s kid because of this exact thing that happened. And there have been a lot of people that I've known, especially in recent times, that have also grown up during the mid to late 90s. But as a matter of fact, many of us should definitely look on into that part of our past where we pretty much have ourselves a big connection with what the previous millennium was like. And I do, in fact, have a lot of technology. And I have had a lot way back then. But the technology back then was just one of a kind. It does have a lot of nostalgia to it, though. And that is the key word there, nostalgia. How it links to the fact that I'm considered as a 90s kid, it's very easy, as a matter of fact, to determine how that is. Basically, a lot of the nostalgic stuff that comes about includes televisions that used to be much smaller back in the day, whereas the ones that we get today are 75, 100 inches. They're massive compared to how small our televisions were 20 years ago. Our televisions couldn't even be more than 30 inches at most. And oddly enough, there really has been a lot of different innovations and the like that tried to make televisions larger, but only so many people could get their hands on those. The ones that were at least 40 to 50 inches, but for the most part, we mainly stuck around with televisions that were less than 28 inches. I do remember having a Toshiba that was about 24 inches. And of course, I did progress over to a 40-inch flat screen. And then, of course, I had nothing, eventually. And the reason for that is, well, because I've really taken up on the small screen. Especially when it comes to looking at stuff on my smartphone. And in general, I will just point out really quickly that I've definitely had a lot of old technology. I did, after all, grow up with playing Sega Genesis-based games, as I did have an actual Sega Genesis console, but for a very short amount of time. There were consoles here and there that came out throughout the 2000s that pretty much emulated some of those games, though. And I was able to get a 6-pack of Genesis games, which included Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Echo the Dolphin, The Ooze, Gain Ground, a Tetris clone, which is known as Columns, and Alex the Kid. So that was pretty much something that I've had for a long time, and as a matter of fact, in the room nearby, I still have it. I still have that piece of hardware right there. After 15 years of, well, having it, that's just pretty much it. But I did have actual consoles, including the Nintendo 64 and GameCube, as well as the Xbox 2001, and all other models of the PlayStation, including the 1, 2, and 3. I currently have the 4, but there's a good chance I might pick up the 5 next year. No promises. But of course, aside from all that, I've definitely had a lot of consoles that I pretty much had come in and then eventually leave. I ended up selling my PlayStation 2 off to a family whose house blew up, and I ended up selling my Nintendo Wii and all of its accessories and games over to someone who, well, was looking to buy a used console some point a few years back. Ended up getting more than $86 worth out of it. And as for everything else, well, they pretty much came and went. I don't really know every bit of affair that I've had with them, but it just goes to show that, well, the past can always be around you until something ends up happening to the point in which that a sacrifice must be made to ensure the balance of life remains in effect. Let that be a little pearl of wisdom to anyone out there who's looking forward to finding out what my next 10 years of life are going to be like. If the 2020s, of course, are going to have a huge redeeming factor, then, well, I'd say even bigger technological advances might come through, and not to mention, Generation Z is going to be crawling all over us. The millennials are pretty much about to come to an end at this point. I could feel the energy that's popping up, that the Zs are going to be all over the place, and I just might feel the tension building up. But in a way, we could probably expect a lot of new things to come around as well. Especially because the 2020s are going to be a really big spot for my content, because there will be new series coming soon, and there will actually be some new feature film projects that I will have on a full-time basis. It's been a few years since the last time I ever did a feature film related project, and now, here, in 2020, is a time where I could probably start getting to work on some more of those projects. So at this point, let's just consider the fact that I'm going to be real busy throughout this next decade, and maybe the next one, the one after that, so on, so forth. But until all that happens, I pretty much just got anything that I have right here, right now. And if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.